Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. In today's episode, we're going to close this series that we had with Derek Grimes, the story of Urantia, how God was revealed to us, the different stages of humanity within this progression. And now we come to this final episode where we basically draw all this information. So now we're going to talk about the source where we find all this information. So 500,000 years, this planet has been part of a long spiritual story, one marked by rebellion, loss, and repeated divine intervention. Last few episodes, we explored the planetary princess staff, the Lucifer rebellion, Adam and Eve, and the preparation for humanity for the arrival of Jesus. Jesus revealed the Fatherhood of God and the Brotherhood of humanity. But history did something unexpected with that message. Over time, the teachings of Jesus slowly shifted from the life he lived to doctrines about his death. And that raised a profound question. Why was another revelation needed? In the early 20th century, a book appeared claiming to tell the full story of our planetary history, our place in the universe, and the divine presence living within each human being. If that revelation is real, then it means something extraordinary. We are not fallen, humanity has never been abandoned, and our spiritual future is far larger than we imagine. Today we explore why the fifth revelation was sent and what it means for the future of our world. So this was a long intro, and this is we haven't gone to the segment intro, but welcome, Derek. I think this is a very interesting topic, as many of the ones before.
Yeah, it's the one we've been building to, so it's good. Yeah.
So here's an interesting situation where we do not just find about the past, but see what's happening and see what's in store for us if we can, draw up some conclusions. So that's going to be a lot of fun. In this segment, we're going to see how Jesus came to reveal the Father, not to found a religion about himself. Within a generation of his life, the story began to shift. The focus moved from the message of the kingdom within to doctrines about sin, sacrifice, and salvation through the cross. How did that transformation happen? And if the original message became partially obscured, could that be one reason a new revelation was necessary? So a lot of questions, a lot of information. Please tell us, Derek, a little bit of this story.
All right. So I guess this episode is basically wrapping up everything we've been talking about. So just as a very, very quick recap, we're talking about 5 revelations of truth on our planet so far, including the one we're going to be talking about today. And we talked about the first revelation, which is the arrival of a planetary administration on the planet, which is designed to co-create civilization with humanity. And we learned how that failed, and our planet was betrayed to the Lucifer rebellion, and everything just totally collapsed and plunged us into confusion and darkness. One of the heroes of that age, his name was Van, and he carried the light of truth onwards from when the Lucifer rebellion broke out 200,000 years ago. He carried that all the way through 160,000 years to the arrival of Adam and Eve, who we also talked about. And Adam and Eve, they had a twofold mission. One was to try to rehabilitate the planet and pull it out of this chaos and confusion. And from there, obviously, start rebuilding and moving us forward in the same way that the first plan was to co-creatively build civilization. The other thing that they came to do was to uplift human genetics. And we talked a lot about that as well. So they came to inject divine DNA into the human gene pool. And we got a whole episode about that. So
just a brief recap in history, and so for people, if this is the first time they're hearing this, so it's we understand that there's this biological progression or evolution that it gets to the point where we have this divine genetics that it starts there, or
Right.
not that it starts, but it continues there. So we see this evolution within the biological nature, the material nature, that starts to become more spiritual within human beings, right? So
Yes.
that's a lot of
Yeah.
what, and why you can see that there's a confusion why they were the first humans. Of course, I mean, if they are really, blending with us, they are really, a part of our history. We come
Yeah.
from them as well, right?
They are the mother and father of a distinct race on our planet
Yeah, yeah,
of divine beings, I guess. And that's where we get a
yeah,
lot of our mythology from, as
yeah.
we talked about and as we love to talk about.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that's a
Yeah,
lot of more in store for that. So keep in tune. This is not the end of these conversations. So we have
exactly.
more installed. So yeah, so
Exactly.
that's where we have, or one of the, like you said, the other mission for these material sons and daughters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, their mission failed. They defaulted. That's in our mythology. In what we read in the Bible of them being cast out of the garden, and they actually did leave the garden and had to rebuild. Um, and basically, the race that they built up, because they ended up dying, they became mortal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it diluted over the centuries and millennia,
Yeah.
and that's kind of supposed to happen, but it's not supposed to dilute really as much as it has. So we only received a very small portion of what we're supposed to generally get.
Yeah.
Um, but also not the spirit of truth, but the light of truth
Mm-hmm.
on the planet really started fading because there was no one to guide that anymore, right? Adam and
Yeah.
Eve, there was no physical manifestation of the divine government of God on our planet anymore.
Yeah.
I
That
mean,
ended with them.
that ended with them, right? We had
Yeah.
the princes, the planetary administration before the Lucifer rebellion. We had Van and his people all through the 160,000 years. We had Adam and Eve, and then they died, and the cord was cut, so to
Yeah.
speak. So
Yeah.
there's nobody to really keep guiding that light of truth,
Mm-hmm.
and that became a huge problem. So Adam and Eve came about 37,000 years ago, and by about 3000 BC, this light of truth had become just barely a glowing ember,
Mm-hmm.
and the divine beings who were in charge of running things, because everything had defaulted, they're called emergency sons or Melchizedeks, and that's what
Yeah.
we were talking about in another episode. Um, Melchizedek, there's 12 of them. One of them decided he better do an emergency mission, and
Yeah.
he bestowed himself physically on the planet for 90 years, and he also had a twofold mission. The first part of the plan was to reignite this light of truth,
Mm-hmm.
this truth of the universal Father.
Exactly.
Um, and the other thing was to start creating a foundation for what was coming.
Yeah.
And what was coming was Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. And they already knew that he was coming. And so they needed to set up some sort of foundation for him to work with. And so
Okay.
that's what we talked a lot about in our last episode was Jesus and the significance of his arrival and what he actually did while he was here,
Yeah.
and what it all meant and what he actually taught, which is really important as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that in our planetary history, our long planetary history, we're talking 500,000 years of history that we've been describing in this series.
Yes.
That is the real turning point for us. It dramatically shifted the trajectory towards, like we've been going way off on a trajectory of where it's supposed to really be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Jesus came and he's sort of turning us back onto getting us
Yeah.
normal again, right?
That's a good description of
Yeah,
putting it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're not there yet. He didn't just snap his fingers and everything's perfect, and there's still a lot of work to do, and we'll be talking about that today. But what we did talk about at the end of our episode last time is that when he ascended, the Spirit of Truth was poured out upon the planet, and the Spirit of Truth is his personal spirit. So it's basically when he was here with us physically, he could only interact with us on a person-by-person basis because he
Yeah.
was a person. But his Spirit of Truth, his spirit, can be with everyone everywhere at the same time. And
Once
that's how powerful it
yeah,
is. Yeah,
he liberated himself from the material body, then he can pour out his spirit. So this is enormous.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
now we have this other spirit within us, and there's many spirits. I mean, that's another topic, but
right.
this special one, which is truth, and it's important because truth is always within us, and
Yeah,
when something is presented, I mean, you can always discern if it's, I mean, if you're genuinely and your intentions are obviously for the good, you always differentiate truth.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Another component of who is with us all the time is a divine fragment that we've learned about,
Yeah.
and that comes directly from the Universal Father. And his being here allowed what's called the universal pouring out of the divine fragment, so that every single person on the planet now, at a certain age, which is somewhere I think now between 5 and 6 years old,
Mm-hmm.
um, has a divine fragment that indwells them. So
Yeah.
that's like big stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
and the last thing is that the Lucifer rebellion was finally functionally ended.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the big things. So this episode now picks up from there, really. So
And this is
yeah,
very interesting because, as we were saying, and you're going to explain this, how we get to this point. We have,
yeah,
like you said, this emergency bestowal, and now this very important situation where, with this particular planet that we live in, that has, not only a couple of things that didn't work out, a lot of things that didn't work out, and put us in the situation where we have Jesus coming and kind of combining a lot of different missions into one, and kind of making a special mission to put us in the right trajectory. But although, and this is important to say, I mean, that, defined the last 2,000 years, that shift. I
yeah,
mean, we see it. Christianity shaped the
yeah.
world. If it wasn't for
It did.
Christianity,
Yeah,
the world that as we know it, wouldn't exist. But it wasn't the actual teachings. It wasn't that. Although it was Christianity has been a civilizing feature factor teaching, whatever you want to call it, that got civilization to this point. Now we have to. I think it's interesting, and we're going to talk about why this at this moment we have to re-understand Christianity and the teachings of Jesus in itself. So
that's right.
tell us about
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
Derek.
So you're talking about teachings, and I think it's really important to really emphasize what he actually taught, and that
Mm-hmm.
can really be boiled down into just a couple of sentences, really. So the foundation of what he taught is that we can all have a personal relationship with the Universal Father,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, we are all brothers and sisters under the Fatherhood of God.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes us all one family, not just a planetary family or a family of people in one religion or another religion. We're talking universal. Our
Yeah.
whole planet, every other living sentient being in the whole of all creation,
Yeah.
universes upon universes. We are all brothers and sisters under the fatherhood of God.
Yeah.
And that is an incredible teaching. Like you can just dig and dig and dig and deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's just so profound.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I mean that relationship. I mean, it sounds very simple, and it is simple. But as you recognize your brothers, and you have that altruistic or that goodwill, and that's the famous goodwill towards men. That goodwill that you have within of doing good and of serving and of looking for the benefit of both. then you're co-creating, because we're seeing that we're co-creators. We're not just, random accidents within this fish tank that we're just being watched, but we are, you know, part of the evolution of this universe, not only planet. So
Yeah.
once we understand that interaction and we become an active part of it, then we assume, our divine role. It might sound corny or cliche, but it
No.
is,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's how it happens.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I think another couple of things that we have to emphasize is what he came to do here.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be talking about this a little bit more, but it was definitely not to become a sacrifice. And we'll
Exactly.
talk about that in a minute. But I
Yeah.
think fundamentally, and we all know this, he came to reveal the nature of the universal Father to humanity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you can see that it's such a distinct contrast between the Old Testament depiction of God and the
Yeah.
New Testament, right?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
that exactly shows the upgrade in the understanding that we have of the nature of the universal Father because of Jesus now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
a lesser understood thing that I think he also came to do was he was also at the same time revealing man to God.
Yeah.
He was revealing us as we really are to God in a way that it's just so intimate and just
Yeah. And incarnated, he became
yeah,
one.
yeah,
He became a human. So imagine
yeah,
that. That's really profound. Once you
yeah,
analyze it and you put it in perspective, and it goes
yeah,
all the way to the Father, to the center of the universe. It's really important. Yeah.
um so let's keep that in our minds because that's actually going to become really uncomfortable in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, that's going to be good. And
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
I mean, all this build
yeah,
up, everything. So we got to this point where now we have, I mean,
yeah,
the trajectory was corrected, but then it was
yeah,
kind of skewed within that
yeah.
correction. So let's see what this is all about. What
That's
what
right. So what
happened?
happened? What happened? And believe it or not, it actually started on the day of Pentecost. And it wasn't a deliberate thing. It was just um like you can imagine what the apostles and the female apostles, who there were female apostles, how they were feeling in between the um death of Jesus and his ascension. They were going through all of these emotions and
Mm-hmm.
misunderstandings and confusion and grief and belief and unbelief and just all of this
Yeah.
crazy stuff going on. And so you can imagine when the Spirit of truth finally came and indwelt the apostles on Pentecost, and that's a thing that actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's Michael's spirit now coming to you know
Pour into
be
everybody.
pour across the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Peter stood up and started preaching because he was just so motivated and just spiritually excited, and he got the message wrong. He changed the message. Instead of teaching what Jesus taught them to teach, he started praising the risen Lord.
Okay.
He and in some ways rightfully deified Jesus, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not the focus of what Jesus taught them to teach.
Yeah.
He was teaching them about personal relationships with God. He was talking about how if every single person has a divine fragment, then basically every relationship that you are having with somebody, you're kind of having that relationship with God too.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that
Okay.
he was teaching people, and so we're talking another tangent again, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it was unintentional. He was excited and
He's a human,
yeah.
and
So
all of us are. Yeah.
yeah, so it changed from what Jesus taught to who Jesus was, and that's what Christianity has kind of become. So Paul, when he came along, he added to this, right? He did a lot of good stuff. He's credited as one of the 7 outstanding teachers in all of human history. So he
Mm-hmm.
must have done something right. But so he carried Christianity to the Gentiles, and Christianity really is Pauline Christianity. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Christianity actually is. It's based on the
His
theology of
teachings.
Paul.
Yeah, his his
Yes,
his basis. Yeah.
right. Unfortunately, Paul's theology also included this idea of the atonement, that
Mm-hmm.
Jesus came here to sacrifice himself for the original sin, basically,
Yeah, this
right?
was trying to fill in the gaps, right? They
Right.
were saying, okay, so how does Jesus fit into all of this as the Messiah and this and the story, and we have this original sin and Adam and Eve. So he's put in there
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
necessarily being there
Yeah.
to
And
justify the story.
they're trying to answer this really difficult question for them at the time. How could a son of God die? Why would he die? What's the reason for that? And so
And you have to think
this is
of
Paul's
2,000
answer.
years ago, 2,000
Yeah,
years ago, the education,
right?
everything, the cosmology of how we understand things, you know.
Yes. And Paul, obviously, as trained as a Pharisee, um, knew a lot of Jewish not philosophy,
The
theology as well.
foundations, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And there's a lot of like sacrifice for sin and stuff like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
in
exactly.
Judaism, right? So this idea of a sacrifice for the sin of a fall that, as we've covered, especially in the Adam and Eve episode, never happened, right? So
Mhm.
as we've learned, there was no fall of man. It was the fall of Adam and Eve, who were divine beings who came here to help us. It wasn't us, it was them.
Yeah.
Um, so if there's no fall of man, there's no original sin.
Mhm.
And this whole entire atonement framework completely collapses, because the idea is that it's a sacrifice to pay for the sins of man, and sin came into the world through Adam and Eve. And
It doesn't work that way.
yeah, it's a house of cards is what it
Basically.
is, really. Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
So then you come to the question, well, you know, why did Jesus die the way he died? And we talked a little bit about this already, but
Yeah.
it wasn't necessary for him to die violently the way he did. What was required was for him to live a life as a normal mortal, and for him to experience the consequences that come with a life like that and the choices.
The
And
accidents within that life, the
exactly,
sometimes injustices that are not done by God, but rather human beings. And that's
that's
something
right.
that we have to understand. It wasn't
Yeah,
God. It was really the will of humans, really.
that's right. It was what it boils down to. It was a reaction of the religious leaders of the time,
Yeah.
absolutely, completely, totally rejecting him
Yeah.
and his message, which is an absolute tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so then we talk about the resurrection. What exactly is the resurrection then? And in my mind, that's the actual revelation. Well, not but like a really fundamental part of the fourth revelation, Jesus's revelation. And that is resurrection is proof
Mhm.
of the afterlife.
Mhm.
He died, he rose again, he was resurrected, and he made himself visible to us so that we could see that we survived death.
Exactly.
That is the fundamental thing that he was showing us by coming back after he died.
And let me make this note here, which is interesting. And before I read the Urantia book, I saw the resurrection as something physical. And what we understand, and you have to read it, or at least
Yeah,
go to the Urantia book pod, and then you can get something there. But it, his material body just dissolved. Let's say in a way
yeah,
disappeared.
yeah,
It accelerated in time, which we're gonna think come into a little bit further. But his resurrection was in this mid stage between spirit and material, which is called
Yes.
the morantia. This is, and
Yeah.
that's why when Mary Magdalene and all the depictions they hear in the Bible that he had this luminous glow, that is the morantia nature. So it was
Yeah.
really, this new nature coming to us. It's interesting, and that
Yes.
makes more sense than saying, okay, there wasn't just a dead body come up, which is what
Yeah.
happened with Lazarus. Lazarus did what was,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
resurrection of a physical body. In his case,
Yeah.
it was the beginning of the morancha phase of his life.
Yes. And that also explains why nobody immediately recognized Jesus as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
So
It gets
we've got,
interesting. So yeah.
yeah. So we got 2,000 years now since all of this happened. And because of Peter's tangent and Paul's theology and a whole
And
bunch of
history.
other and history and people working on things and thinking and just piling on piling on piling
Evolving
on.
the concept.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is if you start piling and building on something that's already off the
The skewed.
trajectory,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, the distance between them gets bigger and bigger, and so by the time we're at 2,000 years, look at how far apart we are already, right? So
And that's why everybody that just doesn't really doesn't make sense, because we now are more educated, we have more conclusions, we have the scientific world, and a lot of it doesn't make sense, and it's like, okay, why should I believe in something that doesn't? But when it clicks, and it's not about faith, when logic clicks, then faith can actually, that's the spirit of truth. That's where you say, okay, so these foundations, this basis is truth. And I understand, and that happened to me, why I shied away from the traditional Christian teachings through Catholicism into this new revelation of the real nature of Jesus. And it's
yeah,
important. So anybody that's really listening to us and has this feeling and says, it doesn't make sense, when it does make sense, and please listen to the whole story, and if you can, read a
yeah,
little bit more. I mean, it's really going to change your life, because everything falls into place, and it's really understood. All right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let's continue with this, Derek.
And I'll just also say that in the Bible, there are 4 books, canonical books about the life and teachings of Jesus. Each one, say
Hmm.
about 70 pages each one. I think Mark is a little shorter. Um, the Urantia section that depicts the life and teachings of Jesus is 700 pages. So imagine how much more information and detail there is in there about what he actually said and did.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to imagine, just go and check it out yourself.
Yeah.
It's
It's
absolutely
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. So now we're coming to, it's 2,000 years later. We're falling into a familiar pattern here, right? We
Yeah.
don't have this physical manifestation of the divine government here on the planet. And over the centuries and millennia, things get distorted and things get diluted. And we've already demonstrated that we're on a trajectory, right? And
Hmm.
it's going further and further off of what should have been, or
Hmm.
what at least they were hoping would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we've got this pattern again. The question that the universe administration is facing, and now I would put our timeline at about the very end of the 19th century, so the end of the 1800s.
Hmm.
They're sitting there going, well, we got to do something about this, right?
The most
And
savage of the century was about to begin, the 20th century. The most
yeah,
deaths in, yeah.
and we know that not necessarily everything's predestined, but they have a way of sort of seeing a lot further into the future a lot more clearly than we do.
Hmm.
We talked about that with
Yeah.
Melchizedek, right?
Yeah.
So they're sitting there thinking, well, how do we intervene on a planet still in quarantine? We're still quarantined because of the Lucifer rebellion. There's no resident physical administration. And there are still 2 rebel personalities here on the planet. Most of the rebels were removed when Jesus ascended, but
Hmm.
Caligastia and his right-hand guy, Dalagastia, are still here.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we intervene? And interestingly, right at about that time, what you would call universal literacy on the planet was achieving a level where a book is probably a really good idea, because literacy rates all over the planet were skyrocketing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're in a position now where there's probably still quite a few, but it's getting less and less and less,
Yeah,
the
the,
number
the
of
the
people who
proportion
can't
is
read.
now
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So a book, especially in the beginning of the 19th or 20th century, is probably the best answer, and that's what they decided. So we're going to start communicating, right? So they start looking around, and they start looking at different groups of people, and there were a few, and they were looking as well at this one group in Chicago, and this one particular person, his name was William Sadler. He was a doctor, right? A
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist and doctor, and he was also, interestingly, a committed debunker of spiritualism and the
Which was
paranormal.
rampant at that time. That was
Very much
the
so. Yeah, it was
uh,
all the rage at the time. They're having seances and all that kind of stuff, and he'd go in and he'd sort of look for all the contraptions and try and debunk it all, right?
mm-hmm.
So they're thinking, well, this kind of guy is kind of ideal if we're going to start, trying to communicate with him, right? Because he's going to really try and figure this out and realize that it's the real thing. So he's
Yeah.
not someone easily fooled, right? So
Yeah.
a contact was established, and they call this guy the sleeping subject. And it's just this guy who would fall asleep.
We don't know his name. We don't know, and
No,
and the story is that this wasn't that suddenly this Sadler was called, right, and he started
he was
studying.
called. It was in his
Yeah.
building or something where he was living. And because he's a doctor, they sort of called him down and said, can you please take a look at this?
Yeah.
And so they started sort of looking at this, and um, I'm not sure if people were actually or into, I don't know what you call them, personalities, were speaking through this guy, or he was just writing. But there was communications going on, and Sadler was going back and forth and really trying to trip this up to try and find out what was going on. And finally, a message came through and said, if you really knew what you had here, you would start asking some serious questions. And that kind of changed everything. So started asking serious questions. And eventually a small group formed, and they eventually called it the Forum.
Mm-hmm.
And they would meet at Sadler's house in Chicago. And um, this sleeping subject would have written some stuff out, right? And so Sadler would present the stuff, he'd read it out or whatever, and they'd discuss it. And all of the celestial beings who were there would be listening and watching, and they would write down answers, or they would revise based on the discussion and the questions being asked. And so, like, there's this give and take process that's going on,
Okay.
and this went on from about the early 1920s all the way into the mid 1930s.
Okay.
It was a very
A
long
little bit
process,
more than
and
10 years, right?
it was, yeah, I would say, yeah, probably 15-ish, maybe even more, because it
Okay.
took a little while for the forum to really, like,
Yeah. Come
coalesce.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the sleeping subject, they date that back as far as 1910, 1911, maybe. So
Okay.
there's a period in between there and the forum that I think some information was coming as well, but it wasn't as formalized.
Okay.
So, but again, a lot of this it's the legend of how this
Yeah.
came to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
really, right?
Exactly.
Um, so this is sort of how we got parts 1, 2, and 3 of what is now the Urantia book. And they came in a series of papers. There's 196 papers on different topics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cosmological, historical, scientific, you name it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so most of this was done by about the mid 1930s. And then suddenly, part 4 was materialized. It just showed up exactly like it is now. And that's because it was a gift from our midwayer cousins. And midwayers are a type of celestial being who exists between us and the angels. So they're the closest to our level of reality. And the midwayers are actually the permanent residents of our planet. The oldest midwayers have been here since pretty much the founding of the planetary administration 500,000 years ago. The youngest ones date back more to Adam and Eve. But they have been here and they will be here. They have been here for ages upon ages upon ages. They're the historians of the planet.
Okay.
They chronicle everything that's happened. They help out where they can. They do all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're going to be here until they're released when our planet is finally settled in what's called light and life, which is basically we've become perfected.
Okay.
And then they are allowed to continue the way we do as mortals when we die, into an ascension plan, which is really cool stuff that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
outside the scope of what we're talking about today.
Definitely. But yeah.
So part 4 is a gift from these midwayer cousins of ours. And what's so significant about it is exactly what I was gushing about when we were talking about Adam and Eve, because the papers that we get about Adam and Eve were written by, I'm going to get this wrong, was it a seraphim?
I don't know. I'm
No.
too many personalities.
Written by a celestial being who was actually there.
Okay.
The Adam and Eve's papers, and let that sink in. The Adam and Eve papers were written by the person who was actually there, the voice in the garden.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The 700-page part 4 part of the Urantia book is written by our midwayer cousins who were actually there,
Exactly.
watching it all, chronicling it all.
Yeah. Imagine
Like
that.
it's eyewitness testimony.
Yeah.
That is extraordinary, and it continues, and I've said it before, it just blows me away like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's basically, we've got parts 1, 2, 3, which came into being through this process, give and take with the forum, and then we've got this part 4, which is gifted to us by the midwayers, and then World War II happens. And everything, blows up, and it's just a total mess, and things got delayed, and the actual publishing of all of these papers in a book form didn't actually happen until 1955.
After the war.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so the Urantia book was officially published in, I believe, October 1955.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right.
So that's how we've gotten to
In
the
basically
Urantia
just
book.
an interesting side note, and that might be interesting later on, but the same day, same year, same city where the new pope is, that's an interesting coincidence. I don't know, but
Oh, I
interesting to
didn't.
point out.
Yes, I didn't catch that. Wow, that's a good
Yes,
one.
yes, actually,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a coincidence, but I don't know.
Is
Anyways,
it?
yeah,
Is it?
I don't know. There's a saying in Maya that
Yeah.
it's nothing is coincidence or casualidad. You say in
Yeah, there's
Spanish,
no
it's not
such thing as a
casualidad.
coincidence. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
causalidad. There's a cause to it. There's not a
yeah,
casualty. It's a
yeah,
cause to it. So
yeah.
that's an
Love it.
interesting take. So
Love it.
anyway, so we have the publication 1955, and there's been a lot of stuff from that point to basically where we're at now. What's the what happened? Because a lot of people are saying, okay, it's a cult, it's a this, it's a that, it's a fucking a bunch of freaks. It's what is it? Who's behind it? What did we do? Who is it that we are?
Yeah, the cult thing, that really grates on me, but I can understand why people would say that
Yeah.
because, yeah. But I think it's important to remember that 2,000 years ago, Christianity was Paul's cult,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And look at where it is now. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
everything has to start from something, and this is the next dispensational revelation of truth to our planet, and it's going to
Yeah.
take a while for it to sink in.
Yeah.
That's really what it
Definitely.
is. Yeah.
Definitely.
So what's been going on? I think it's important to say that especially post World War II, we live in a very secular and apathetic to a lot of anything spiritual culture,
Mm-hmm.
civilization.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people came out of the two world wars and all of the other wars that we've been having
Cold
since
War,
then.
everything that happened in the
Yeah.
20th century, definitely.
And they sit there and they go, where is God? You know? And and it's been hard. And so the devastation of the wars has caused a lot of atheism, and it's
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunate, but there are reasons. And we can't get into all of that now, unfortunately, but I don't know if the Urantia book has been well received at this point because of that apathy towards real spiritual hungering for truth.
Yeah.
So when it was first published, everyone, like the forum members, they were so excited. It's like, let's light the world on fire, right? Just like the apostles and Paul and everybody, like they went out and they lit the world on fire and they,
Yeah.
transformed Western society, right? So it's like, let's do it again. And they sent these books out to, copies of the book out to world leaders and religious leaders, to a resounding chorus of crickets. you know um but the thing is, in the ensuing years, there have been the truth seekers and the hungry people who have been led to it by our spiritual helpers and stuff, and
Yeah,
word
which
of
is
mouth.
interesting. It wasn't like, okay, here's it came very silently as a whisper.
Yeah.
Let's say it that way.
And that's kind of how I think it's grown over the past 70 years.
Yeah.
um I personally am frustrated with that.
I think
um
everybody that reads the book and believes in this revelation is frustrated with that, because you
I
see
agree. I
the
agree.
change in your lifestyle. That's and
Yeah.
it's really practical in the way that you live your life, in the way that the quality of your life with that personal relationship. It's so personal. It's not about we have to create this structure and dogma and change everybody. No, it's changing you. It's really making you so self-assured in your faith that you want to give that gift to everybody. And it's a pity that many people cannot and are not willing to just a little bit. And but you understand that there might be a time, and that's not for you to do, and
Yeah.
that's part of what the book teaches you. You can
Yeah.
just lead them to the front of the temple, to the gate, but it's that their
They
choice to
have
come
to
in.
they have to come in. That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the Melchizedek covenant, right? All you
yeah,
have to do is believe to go in those gates. And Jesus said, well, if you want to stay in there, you have to start exercising some faith. But all you have to do is believe to get in.
yeah.
So that's
So that's the
important.
situation where we're confronted to this whispering, and here I think we can, we start to come into this history. We start to get
Yeah.
into this story, because
Yeah.
I think in my case, and I think anybody that you talk to who is a UB reader tells you, the book found me, I didn't found it, and the process that you go through, that revelation of God to you, is very important, very personal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's yeah, it is what it is, unfortunately. So but there are more and more dedicated people with skills and with the zeal to share this message. And I think we're hopefully coming upon a era of second wind in terms of getting this going. So I think we're also sort of at the closing out of a certain era as well. It feels like this post-war era. A lot of people
In
call it
in in both
Pax.
both Earth history and cosmic history, which I think what we're going to
Yes.
get into
Yeah,
the
we'll
third
be
part,
getting into
because
that too. Yeah.
I think we're
Um,
everything is converging into one position.
that's right. So this post-World War II Pax Americana sort of thing seems to be disintegrating at an alarming rate.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's doing is it's basically making way for something new, I think.
Definitely.
That's an
Definitely.
opinion. But
No, and I agree. That's why
yeah,
you know a lot of people see the situations here. It's if you go and see a birth, you see and you don't do not understand what's going to about to happen, the life that's
yeah,
going to be born. You
yeah,
think it's the worst thing that's happening. You know what's happening to this poor woman, but those are the growing pains, and this is what I think is happening to us. We're really coming to realization of that situation, right?
yeah, yeah. Cool.
Okay, so that we can go and dive a little bit deep into what the book teaches and then what's coming. So maybe we can sum up here in this section, just saying that the after the publication, it's been a below 70 years build up, and one of the things that we believe in, or that we concluded in as UB readers, because this isn't a church, this isn't in a
No,
hierarchy or anything, as people that read this, is that the first stage was a lot of leaders and teachers, kind of set a basis, and it's worldwide now. And believe it or not, you would amaze yourselves at the amount of important people and that well-renowned people know about the book, are readers, and maybe are not public about it, but that they are. So
that's
it's
right.
been
Yep.
seeded, and now we
Yes.
have this new stage that maybe we can talk about later, but. I mean,
Sure.
just to close the segment, because I think it's been the longest segment in this podcast history. So, what can we close? You were going to get the record for that, Derek. So, what can
Awesome.
we close here in this section, in this segment?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that this is the fifth breath of the light of truth onto our planet. It's a different breath so far because it's not connected to any individuals,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll be talking about it in the next segment, what we think it actually is. But this is a correction. It's a course correction.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
part of a course correction,
yeah.
I believe. Yeah. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.